Okay. Oh, yeah, we're good.
Start again. Okay. Do you want to put the timer as well?
Yes, I repeated it, so it's already.
Okay, great.
So
I see you in that.
So just to finish off my story real quick, your firm is worth 100 times. So let's say the valuation initially was 150.
Mm-hmm.
It's now worth 15. Blah, blah, blah. We're at what? 150 million. We're at. It's worth 15 billion,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Well, that 8% will still be on the 100 million, and we get paid in common stock, but it's not a huge, significant part of your business. At the end. That's what I mean by the 8% dividends, and maybe
Okay.
maybe it was explained differently.
No. So I agree. Sure. I mean, I'm open to a number like that.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less, but I'm open in that range. I don't mind.
Okay.
A number around that, but like again, I would say it depends on the valuation
Okay.
of the firm, and yeah.
And we're pretty sure your company's a slam dunk. Like, come on,
Mm-hmm.
you guys are pretty awesome.
It's space travel after all, right?
It is.
So another thing that I thought that would interest you, and given that you're putting a large investment, I feel that anti-dilution is something that you would be interested in.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested.
And I'm very open that the VC has the right to first refusal.
Okay.
Would you like that?
Oh, I mean, I appreciate that you're
Okay.
forward with this, and it's an appreciated gesture. But yes, I would be very interested in that.
Great.
I think you mentioned it earlier on in the negotiation. You talked about that. You're being very forward. Okay.
So we didn't. So are you open to 2 VC board members?
2 VC board members. I thought you mentioned one.
I mentioned 1, but
Yeah.
then you thought it's kind of-
Okay. Okay.
Are you open to 2 or?
I mean, why? I'm curious. Why would you be changing your mind right away?
No, I'm not changing my mind. I would prefer 1,
Yes.
but I mean, if that's something that you're interested in, and you showed that you're interested in
Mhm.
having kind of like a representation on the board.
I think you're right. I think, well, what I agree with you is there needs to be fair representation,
Okay.
and that has to be consistent with
Sure.
the equity. And I know that it's valuation is it's a very incremental part,
Mhm.
and representation is huge increments. As soon as you add one person, you're jumping a lot in terms of proportionality. I was just hoping that there would be a fair representation, and that's the sheer number for me just has to be consistent with.
Great. So do you want to go back to the valuation?
Maybe we could talk about a few other points, because it was a contentious the valuation. Maybe you could run over the other few.
Sure.
Do you how important is it for you to remain CEO of the company? And on the long term, short term, medium term, and I'd like to talk about that openly and to have your thoughts on that. You've done, and I'll put it this way: you've done a great job so far, and that's why we're sitting at this table. And to bring this company to its technical readiness level at this point is an amazing feat, and we just want to discuss going forward as the company's focus shifts from a product development style of company to let's say a commercializing a product, and let's say a more customer focused company, as you're trying to get more people to do space travel. If you would be open to have a change, you would remain an important aspect. You would keep your shares obviously in the company, but to change leaderships to a different style of CEO. And I want to talk about it, and if you're willing to share your thoughts, I'd be open to hearing.
This company is kind of my brainchild, and I mean, if we look at similar companies that had this phase of kind of like the CEO who brought everything, who did everything from the beginning, who was there to do the design and everything, and then I mean, just on the top of my head, what happened with Apple, right? They went into 10 years they got a guru from Pepsi, right?
Mm.
At the end of the day, it failed miserably for 10 years. I feel that at that point, I don't think that anyone is more appropriate for this position, at least because this is, again, my brainchild. That's what I started. This is my design. I know it inside out. If there is anyone who would market it, I would value very much experience, and I would look for all the consulting and advising and wisdom that I can reach to, whether from the board or from the tools that you will provide me with, which I'm pretty sure you have a lot in your VC. But for someone to replace me in my firm, I just find, like, last time I found this very offensive to be brought up. I don't know if this is what you do with other firms.
I'm suggesting it because some CEOs might embrace that, and they say, you know what, I'm more of a technical person, and I want to keep working on the product itself, and I may be less interested in growing a company past the stage of this that's here. And I'm bringing it to you because I wanted to have your thoughts on that, and if it's something you were interested in, and it's not meant as an insult to your skill, and as a CEO up to now, but if you were in any way looking for that kind of support, we would need to know right now to bring in the right person, to start looking for the right person to support you in that particular business function. And that's why I mention it. And it's not as an aggressive move to try and edge you out. It's to try and to gauge or to grasp what are the right needs for your company. And that's why I wanted to bring the topic. And it wasn't at all intended to suggest that you were not the right person for the job.
Thank you for that, because like bringing that up in the last meeting left me with that with that feeling, right? It's very bitter for as you would know, like we talk with different VCs, right? That was, as far as I can recall, that was the only meeting that this was brought up from the VC that I'm interested in the most. So yeah, I felt it was a bit offensive to my skills, to what I've done so far for this firm for the past 4 years. So yeah.
You mind if I take a quick break? I need to just read up on a couple facts.
Sure.
Like a minute.
Sure.
Just to make sure I'm well aligned here. Okay, I understand. Okay. Let's continue. Okay. Okay. Excuse me.
No problem.
That's all right. I just needed to read up on a couple things.
No.
Am I still in the shot? Okay.
Yeah.
So, All right, so there's a couple concerns.
Sure.
For all whenever we invest in any growth company, and one of those concerns is, as the CEO is such a huge factor in deciding the outcome of the company, and we want to make sure that as the company grows and their scope changes, that you remain focused and you remain the right person for that current objective. And one of the practices that we tend to do is we tend to look at performance metrics.
Okay.
In terms of in terms of how the CEO is capable of progressing, and the firm coaches the CEO and brings in, as you say, the consultants to make sure that we want you to hit these performance metrics. We share that common interest.
Hey, our success is mutual.
Exactly. So one of the things we tend to implement is certain types of performance metrics. Sometimes they're conservative, sometimes they're more aggressive, depending on the style of person that remains the CEO. And we want to make sure that that focus stays aligned. And this is what I wanted to talk about more specifically. And if you want to stay on board as CEO, and I wanted to make sure that was exactly what you want, and I hear you, we'd be looking at trying to coach you and trying to get you to hit these performance metrics as the company progresses.
Sure.
And maybe if you want to talk about that, and if you're willing to, and if you're confident that you're capable of running the company well, then you would feel confident that you can hit these performance metrics going forward.
Sure.
Which would help us. This would help us mitigate the risk of this uncertainty that, although you're a qualified and experienced engineer, that as a manager you remain a qualified and you're capable of taking on that different role.
So in your last meeting, one of the things that were brought up after, again, I showed that I'm offended at that, is kind of a conservative metric. I don't know what you call it, or something along these lines. I would go back to the valuation. Depending on the valuation, I would be able to consider a conservative metric.
What do you mean, depending on the valuation?
Like depending on where do we land in the valuation.
Yeah.
I will be open to discuss conservative metrics.
Okay, so you would say taking on conservative benchmarks is conditional to having a high valuation. Is that what you're saying? I hear you correctly. Okay. And in any way, would you consider taking on an aggressive benchmarking because you feel so confident in your skills?
Aggressive benchmarking?
Yes.
No. And not even moderate, if you have something.
Interesting. Okay. Can you just run a few numbers, please?
Sure.
Still got time here. You might want to consider doing the same.
For what?
Oh, for your own calculations. Or
Oh,
for your
no,
own numbers.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not my regular keyboard. there's two other topics that we need to discuss
Sure.
before we have a comprehensive look at the entire agreement.
Sure.
One of them is vesting your shares in the company, so latching you on. I guess,
Of course.
you know, if this is your brainchild and you're quite interested in remaining on the long run, remaining invested in the company, so you would feel comfortable vesting your shares for more than 5 years, correct? Because you're so involved. And that's the feeling I got.
If it's up to that, I will vest it for infinity. But I don't think having that put in our investment agreement is fair to me and is kind of
Why
like.
not?
Because if you tell me like, I want to make sure that you're gonna stick around, I don't trust you. Hence, I'm gonna put I don't know. You said like more than 5.
More than 5 years.
Sure, more than 5 years on you, just so that you stay around. Okay, sure, we say 6, 7, I leave. I don't think that's how you build trust. I'm open to that. I can have 3 years.
Mhm.
I'm fine with like something like 3 years, just to make sure that nobody would get a quick return and leave, right? But
Mhm.
telling me like,
But put yourself in my shoes.
Sure.
For example, you have the proprietary IP.
Yeah.
It's your brainchild, as you said it, and we strike a deal with you, and then you're gone within 4 years. How can I know? And this is, you know, you have to put yourself in my shoes. How do I know that this project will succeed without you?
But I
Even-
can't. You were just discussing replacing me as a CEO. I
And
don't
that-
think as a VC
No,
you believe
I
that.
was not discussing, and I think you weren't listening to me, and that's worrisome for you. I was discussing if you would want to have a support as a CEO, and if you wanted to focus more on your technological aspect,
Mhm.
we could bring a CEO. And I wasn't talking, and I never mentioned replacing you as a CEO. I was talking to you about, did you feel more comfortable to
Let me
remain
ask you a question.
CTO?
If my benchmarks fail, right, and then I have, which you want to put, right, and then I have the vesting, so me as a person, I'm just locked in this endeavor.
No, you're not locked in that endeavor. If your benchmarks fail as a CEO, you remain with the company, you focus on what you do best, which is developing the technology, and then we bring in someone to make sure that the technology is commercialized correctly.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that we're looking to kick you out or something else, we're just bringing extra support to make sure that focus is keeping. The position of CEO is an important position. You've got a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders. And we want to make sure that, you know, this company is properly managed and you're able to keep focus both on, like you say, your brainchild and commercializing technology. I'm not suggesting in any way that we would kick you out.
Mhm.
I'm just suggesting that you have to put yourself in my position, and there's a lot of risk to manage. This is a $100 million investment. We've got investors that are backing up, and we're making sure that we do our due diligence, and this is part of it.
Mm.
And you know, and I appreciate that you want to keep control of your company, but try and look at it from my perspective.
Sure,
It's not,
and I'm
it's not an easy call for me.
And I'm open for 3 years.
You're open for
3 years
vesting
of
your vesting your shares for 3 years.
Yeah. If you want to vest it for 4 years or 5 years, then I would require no provision over me as a CEO. You're already locked in my investment.
You're asking for a lot, Safe. You're asking for a huge amount.
I agree.
You're asking for stuff that for us, if I would strike a deal like this,
Mhm.
I would turn to my investors and they would leave me. They would think I'm a joke.
Mhm.
Okay? And I'm serious when I tell you this.
Mhm.
I'm adamant, and I need you to understand that this is important for me. That mitigating the risk, especially from a CEO's perspective, you're a huge part of the company. And it's important for you to understand that there are measures that we need to do to mitigate that risk. And letting you free reign over, you know, doing what you want with your shares, leaving when you want, and you're very confident. I'm not getting a good feel out of this.
I agree. I'm agreeing for a conservative with 3 years of vesting. And I think that's too much for someone who has this idea, designed this idea, and you're sitting with me because you're interested in this idea that I'm bringing forward, and I don't think that anyone is bringing forward at that level of readiness that I'm at this point.
Safe. I'm sorry you feel that way. I really am,
Mhm.
because the reason for me to be here in the first place is that you also need us to give you the support. And you mentioned at the beginning.
And I agree.
And I don't think there are any other VC firms that can give you this level of support.
No.
And it's a win-win, you know?
Yeah.
So claiming that it's your brainchild, you want for control,
Mhm.
you want, you don't want to replace, you don't want to be replaced, you don't want any aggressive measures in terms of performance management. You want to have your company valued at an extremely high level. You're asking for a lot, Safe, and this is making it very difficult for me to trust you, because at one point you're saying I'm super confident in my abilities as CEO, but you're not willing to take any measures in terms of performance.
So let me understand that correctly. You would want aggressive measures, and you would want more than 6 years of vesting. You would want, we agreed on VC right of first. I was open to that. You want 8% of dividend. Are you okay with 2 or more people for the VC board?
I mean, at this point, if it's really important for you to, and I think another thing I'd like to add, and so far you've accurately described my position.
Mhm.
It's not essential for me to control your company. I don't want to control your company. I don't want to have proprietary ownership of your company. I just want to make sure that the company succeeds. I want you to drive the long point.
I'm just
So
trying to get
what I mean by this,
to understand
what I
your
mean by
offer.
this is that having many members on the board for me,
Mhm.
yeah, sure, I'd love that, but you know, I'm not interested in controlling your actions. I'm just I'm interested in mitigating the risk. And the other aspects I talked about are more important to me than having control.
So aggressive metrics.
Definitely, aggressive measures would be
Si-
that would be a huge aspect. For me.
6 years.
That would also be, for me,
Okay.
that would alleviate a lot of the risk.
Okay, great. And we said convertible.
Yeah, we never talked about redeemable, not yet anyway.
Okay, and we said 8% dividend. And we said how many VC board members?
I didn't talk about 2, but let's keep it at 1 for now.
One?
If that for you is something that's encouraging, I'd be willing to.
No, I just wanna see the offer fully. Okay, so we said that. Okay. And we said convertible. And we said VC. Great, so the last thing would be equity.
Yeah.
Right, so,
Wait a second. Let me just quickly make sure, and I will talk about equity right afterward. Just give me a second. Oh, we didn't talk about provisions in terms after this deal for you to go and shop around. That's the last thing we need to talk about afterwards.
sure.
Just give me a second. Make sure that my tally is correct. Okay, now we can talk about it. All right.
And for equity?
So you mentioned, and here's my calculation. I took some time to calculate a little bit earlier. And here were the different positions.
Mhm.
So you value your company between 350 million and 290 million. Your worst forecast
I
was
said my
290.
worst forecast
Your
was
absolute worst
290.
forecast.
That's, yeah.
And a good forecast for you was 350.
Yeah.
And I understand that. So a good forecast would make my post value equity share in the company post valuation at 28.5%. And in your absolute worst case scenario, my post valuation equity share would be 34.4%.
Exactly.
All right. my valuation of the company was 150 million, and we're really far off here. And I think we can come to terms here, because you were very, I mean, you described my position, but I didn't think you, I didn't hear you agree on this. The aggressive provisions and the vesting. I mean, you described my position, but you didn't agree to it. If you were to agree with these terms, I would lean towards more your valuation than towards mine. If you were to agree to that, and I'm, and if this can make this deal work, I'd be willing to talk about that. Yeah, I'm laying the premise to this discussion. If you
Great.
agree with that, we can look at it this way.
Sure. So I would say so aggressive and being very open with you, I cannot accept that. Nor a moderate provision. I would not accept that in my firm. But I'm open for a conservative and 5 years of vesting.
Okay, if I understand you correctly, conservative in 5 years of vesting.
Yes.
If you ask me for that, and I wouldn't agree to that. I would ask for 60% stake in the company in terms of equity. Because if you do that, I take on substantially more risk.
If you want 60%, then we shouldn't discuss anything else.
Why would not?
Because you already have everything. Why you have the majority? You can fire me at any point, do whatever vesting, do every dilution you can do. So there's no need to discuss over 60. I think, again, for the purpose of broadcasting that after for our both firms, are we good for that?
For another minute. Maybe I should just go start it
Sure,
off.
yeah.